Welcome back to Indie Author Blueprint podcast, where we share actionable tips and strategies to help you navigate the world of self-publishing. Today, we're wrapping up the cover design mini-series, and whether you plan to hire a professional designer or tackle the design yourself, this episode will give you some knowledge to help you make your book cover stand out in a crowded market. I'm your host, Michelle Rayburn. I'm an indie author, and I also work with indie authors, and so I'm taking the professional things I've learned and putting them into this format to help you. I know that there are a lot of indie authors out there. I know that as a designer and as an editor, I'm not a fit for every author that's out there, but I have a strong desire to help every author that's out there. And so that's why I've created Indie Author Blueprint. This is where I give you some of the things that I give to my own clients. And it gives you the opportunity to pick and choose from some of the topics and use this as a resource as you work on your own book. We've talked about book covers. This is wrapping up the mini-series on that. But we've talked about the obvious thing. Your book cover is your first impression. We've talked about how it's what makes potential readers want to read further. Look at the blurb, the back cover copy, or look at your reviews. And a great cover isn't just about looking nice. It's about signaling your genre and connecting with that target audience. And it really conveys professionalism if it's done well. In short, your cover is your book's marketing powerhouse. And a lot of people skimp on this. And they wonder, they throw a lot of money at running ads later, and they wonder, why are the ads not getting book sales? And it's costing me so much money, and why am I not getting reviews? Well, if you start with having a good cover first, you don't have to do as much marketing later because the book can almost sell itself. Now, I'm not overpromising there. Let me tell you, I know how much work goes into marketing a book, but it's so much harder to do if you start with a poor cover. Now, talking about starting with a great cover, a lot of times then that means we want to hire somebody. We need to be able to communicate really well with that person what we want. And even if it's yourself, if you're going to do it, you need to kind of know, what are you going for? You need to plan a little bit before you just start willy-nilly. So you're not going to just take a photo and put a title on top of it. You're going to think about it. And then the question comes up, what can I expect when I'm working with a professional designer? Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Hiring a professional designer can feel really daunting, especially if you're not sure how to communicate your vision. Now, speaking of hiring a professional designer, make sure that you're looking for somebody who understands book publishing, not just somebody who's really good with graphic design, because they can design absolutely gorgeous designs, but they might not work for book publishing. So it's really important to know that you're working with somebody who understands what you're going for with how the layout is done or how even the fonts and all of that work. It's just very different from working with somebody who's designing a brochure or a website or something like that for you. So work with somebody who understands books. And then let's talk about how to make this process a little bit smoother. Well, the first thing you want to do is provide a clear brief for them. And we'll cover this in a minute. And I want you to know that I have a book brief template that I've created that you get when you sign up for Indie Author Blueprint. It's one of the freebies that you get into your inbox. There's a whole bunch of files that are linked. You just go to the Google Drive folder. It takes you there, and you can get the book brief template that I've created, and it helps you to think through some of the things that you need to include in your cover. That also helps you to communicate well with your designer. And in a minute, I'm going to go specifically through some of those elements that you need to communicate. So we will talk about that in a second. But before you submit that to your designer, you also want to look for covers you admire that are in your genre and be really specific for your designer on why those appeal to you or why they fit your book really well. When I'm working with authors, I give them a questionnaire. I ask them to show me at least 3 covers they like and show me several that have elements they like. And I ask them to tell me why they appeal to them, not just that they like them. Because sometimes they don't look anything alike. And I'm trying to figure out what is it they like. Well, I like the way the title is done here. And I like the way this one has a central figure. When they tell me that, it really helps me as a designer. The other thing to understand is costs. Professional book cover designs can cost anywhere from $300 to $1,000 or more. Yes, you do find some people who would do it for $50 or $100. Those are usually ebook front covers only and not the full print. And yes, I know there are some of those services out there that do offer, $100 template covers or something like that. But be really aware that it's hard to go back for multiple rounds with some cover designers. You're asking a lot of their time. And I'm saying this because as a cover designer, I average around 10 hours for a cover with multiple rounds of, changes, or if somebody wants to see multiple options in the beginning that can add on, or if it's I'm designing a series and they need 3 covers, that's different. So it just depends. I've spent anywhere from 8 to 15 hours, but I average around 10. And that's important to know because you want to be paying your designer fairly. And so you're going to want to budget this expense. I'm a cheapskate. Let me just say, I want things cheap. I like things free. I want to find the cheapest shoes I can. I regret that sometimes. I want to find, the cheapest products out there that I can find, because, I don't want to be spending more money than I need to. But when you're hiring somebody to do your cover, again, remember this is an important marketing piece. And so this is not the place to cut corners. Expect in the journey with your designer that there will be revisions. This is a collaborative process, so you're probably going to go through several drafts before you finalize your cover. You're going to need to give constructive feedback so you can point out what's working, what doesn't work. Always explain why, because it's hard for me as a designer if somebody just says, I don't like it, it's not me, and I can't figure out why it's not them because I've looked at their website, I've looked at the book content, I've looked at all these things, and to me, I feel like I'm capturing something about their essence and I don't understand what I missed. And if I understand what I missed, I can make instant revisions and hit the nail on the head with that. So there may be some times where you see the very first cover and you're like, that's it, they nailed it. That actually happened to me with my very first book. When I saw the cover for the designer that I hired, it was just one of those, right? It was right. It was only small modifications to do on that cover, but for the most part, he had hit it right on the head for me. Also, make sure when you're working with a cover designer that you own the rights to your cover. So this it's not always true. Like, for example, I use stock photos with covers and I own the rights to those stock photos. So I can't give the client the files. I can't give them the, like if they're using Photoshop or Adobe InDesign or any of those, Illustrator, I can't give them the native files because they could extract my stock photo and use it somewhere, and that stock photo is actually licensed only to me, and it's licensed in such a way that I can use it in a finished design like a cover, but I can't redistribute the actual photo. So if there's something that you really want to be able to use the elements of design in future marketing efforts, you want to take that image that's on your cover and use it in something else. One, you could hire that designer to make you a couple templates that you can use for marketing. So that's one way if they own the image. But the other thing you can do is you purchase a stock image if it's something you really want that you want to use in something else. So you want to think about that. And you want to think about any photography that's used in your cover when you're working with somebody. Is that licensed? Did it come from Unsplash or Pixabay or any of those? If it came from there, you want to make sure it was licensed for commercial use. Okay, that's a lot of the what to expect kind of things. The other thing that this is just something I do with my clients, but I think it's something that's a really nice touch if you can find a designer that will do this. I provide a form with the cover image on it and a little place for people to comment and give feedback. So if I give multiple options on a cover design, they can give some feedback on that. And so work with somebody that has a way of communicating freely with you so that you can easily give input. Maybe it's just on email and you're going to respond and give them that input. But I really like to have that back and forth communication with the author And that way they can give some input and they can say things like, what do you think if we did this in blue and I try it out? And that communication back and forth where I can go back and see their input on the form I gave them is so helpful because I don't have to dig through 10,000 emails to find what was it they said to me. So look for somebody who has really organized communication when you're working with a designer. All right, that was just a little tidbit on the side. Now, I said we would talk about what to include in a book cover brief. There are so many different ways of doing this. You could actually just send a Word document and give a couple links to some examples. You can do like I do with my clients, where I actually give them a form they fill out and they include some details about their book and they give me links to some comparables that they want me to see. Or there's the template that I said you could get when you sign up for Indie Author Blueprint. It's a free printable that you can use to gather some of this info. So the first thing that your designer is going to need to know is the title and subtitle if you have a subtitle. And they're going to want it exactly as it should appear on the cover because they're going to design with that. And again, author name, specifically how you should appear on the cover. Your formal name or your pen name or your initials or any of that, give it to them exactly how you want it to appear. Then you need to communicate the genre and subgenre. So genre like romance, thriller, fantasy, nonfiction, self-help, Bible study, whatever it is, you need to give them that. And then if it's a cross-genre book, you need to explain which elements are most prominent. So if you have a fantasy and it has romance in it, is it more romance or is it more fantasy? That's going to change how the book cover looks and who we're marketing to, so your designer needs to know that. You need to tell your designer the audience and the market. Who is your target reader? What is their age, their gender, their interests, a little bit about you, because it tells them who's picking up this book. And then you want to mention some comparable books that your target audience enjoys. So, if, for example, you might say, if you're a fiction author, you might say something like, my audience is similar to readers of Kristen Hanna or Colleen Hoover. Oh, that narrows it down a lot because now your designer can do a little bit of research and see what kind of covers do those books have and the other ones that are in that genre. Tell your designer about the tone and the mood of the book. Is it dark, playful, inspirational, suspenseful? That's going to affect the mood and the tone of the cover. So use descriptive words like uplifting, romantic, gritty, adventurous. If possible, write a short paragraph describing the book's emotional impact. You might even use some of that for your back cover copy. So go ahead and work on that because when you're putting this together, you're going to have pieces you'll use somewhere else. Then, if your cover designer is not familiar with your story, give them a brief synopsis. A couple of sentences that focus on the core conflict and the premise of your story. Give them the back cover copy. Highlight some key settings or time periods or unique elements that could inspire the design. This is one of the reasons I like it when I happen to also edit books. I like it if I get to design a book cover for a book that I've edited because I have a really clear picture of the story and I actually get some ideas while I'm editing that could be used in the design. And I know that's kind of a rare thing because a lot of times it's a completely different department for editing and cover design. But this is why you just need to educate your designer then on what the story is about. Then that designer is going to want some visual references, not just words and description, but some cover inspiration. So 3 to 5 covers that you admire and then being specific about what you like. Is it the typography, just the fonts that are on there? Do you like the color palette, the imagery, the composition of it? Go ahead and be descriptive with what it is you love about those inspiration covers. You can also include in here things that you don't like. If there are design trends, colors, imagery that you want them to avoid using, be specific about that. Say what you don't like so that you don't have to tell them that after they've already completed a design for you. And then you can even create as you're going. If you're somebody who likes Pinterest boards or mood boards, you could actually create a Pinterest board or a mood board that you can share with your designer, which is a really helpful visual reference. You might have some key imagery or symbols that are in the book, some motifs that are tied to it, like maybe a compass for a mystery or a sword or a crown for fantasy or beach house for contemporary romance. But be really careful with that because that can be overdone. It's not necessary to have a sword on the cover just because there's a sword in the story. It can actually be distracting. So only if it really ties in well, and your designer might be the one who says, yeah, it can be abstract and maybe it slightly ties into the story, and that's okay. But just if those ideas come up, make sure they know about them. I've had, for example, an author with a series tell me that a rose is central in every book in the series. So she wants a rose on the cover somewhere in each one. That makes sense. I'll make sure that I incorporate that. When it comes to a color palette, unless you're working with nonfiction and you have a real brand, like let's say you're a business speaker and you're trying to produce a book that's going to be on your website and your business table that goes along with your business, and it's really going to be tied to your brand, you can go ahead and give them color swatches and fonts that are part of your brand and let them come up with something that fits with it. But otherwise, I would suggest more like color scheme, tell them what fits with the book's tone, or, just say warm tones for cozy or romantic, cool tones for mystery or sci-fi. Like we wouldn't use neon pink in historical fiction. So don't suggest something that doesn't fit if you're giving color. To me as a designer, it's less important nonfiction for me to have a color palette and more important for me to see cover inspiration because that will tell me a lot without you having to put it into words. If there are specific fonts that work for your genre that are always used, you can suggest them: serif, sans serif, script, or bold. But again, seeing visual examples is sometimes more helpful. And the place where I use this more specifically is if somebody has a brand and they're doing a business book, then I do try to use at least one of the fonts from their business brand in their book because it ties in really well. When you're giving your cover designer info, make sure they know the trim size of your book so that they know what it's going to be. Make sure you give them the content for the back cover and tell them if there are going to be logos included or a photo, whatever blurb is going to be there. So if you're pulling out some critical reviews and taking a line or two from those instead of a blurb, all of that needs to be put into a document and given to them so that they know exactly what text they're putting on the book. And then if you're publishing on a specific platform, make sure your designer knows because they can go ahead and look up those templates and get things ready for you. So they're going to, they should know that they need to have 300 DPI. They should know because that's the commercial standard. But if you're working with the distribution platform, tell them it's KDP or Ingram Spark and direct them to where the design instructions are on that website. A few other things to mention: if the book's part of a series, make sure that they know this because the design needs to be able to accommodate future covers that look similar and fit into that brand. So as a designer, I like to know ahead of time if I'm thinking ahead and it's going to fit in with, I'm going to have to make more books that look sort of similar. And then if you have any specific brand guidelines, taglines, give them whatever you have that pertains to that project, and you're going to have a much better cover than if you just say, here's the title, here's the subtitle, here's my name, and I need a book cover. It's just too generic. Okay, so as we wrap up here today, we want to think about a couple of things that I've covered in this series, but wrapping it up, I've talked about using professional tools. So Canva is good for beginners, but it's really tough to do a high quality print book cover in Canva and have it in the format and the color format, everything that the platform is looking for. You're probably going to still have to bring it into some software to get it to where you want it to be. You want to, if you're designing it yourself, you want to keep it simple. Don't overcrowd your cover with a lot of stuff, and be open to suggestions from your designer. If they say, I can't get all this on here, this title's really long, the subtitle's really long, you've got a third subtitle there, I don't know what to do with it. Listen to your designer, and maybe you need to make some changes. I mentioned always checking the thumbnail online, making sure the title and the author name are readable when you're putting it on there, and follow those genre conventions. So don't put something in vibrant colors if you're doing a thriller and it usually has darker tones and bold fonts. Give your readers some expectations they can read right off the cover just based on design. So that's a big summary of some of the pros, the pitfalls. We've talked about the technical specs for doing a cover, how to work with a designer. We've been really thorough with this, but covers are going to come up again. This is getting you started as you're thinking about working on your cover. So whether you're going the DIY route or whether you're hiring somebody to do it, you're going to want to have that stunning design that will meet the platform requirements, and it will wow your reader so that they want to read your book. Remember, your cover is more than just an image. It's your book's brand ambassador. So understanding all of these principles will help you put your best foot forward, and then it turns those browsers into buyers. In the bonus content that I will put out for paid subscribers to Indie Author Blueprint, I'll have an example of some of the things that somebody might put into a design brief for their designer. And so that will be on Substack along with all of this other content. You'll receive that in your inbox if you're a subscriber. And the other thing to know about becoming a subscriber is you always have access then to all of the past content that was available for paid subscribers as well. So if you become a subscriber now, that content still all lives on Substack and you can get access to all the back stuff. So that's important if you're trying to make that decision about whether it's a good investment for you or not. If you're thinking about publishing a book in 2025, we're going to be talking about publishing steps. We're going to be, I'm continuing. Now we're talking about covers. We're going to be talking about interior, and then we're going to go through some of those specific steps as you're uploading on a platform and where you might get stuck in that process and need some help. So I hope you'll be back for the next episode. It will be coming up in 2025. Thanks for listening to Indie Author Blueprint.